Please be seated. Those who have joined us in the past know that we begin our monthly Church of the Wild service, which takes us out into nature to commune with God, ourselves, and the whole created order, with the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address. The Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy, are a powerful indigenous nation comprised of 6 individual nations: the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Cayuga, our local Seneca, and the Tuscarora, who guarded over most of the land we call New York long before Europeans arrived. If you have never read the address, or if you've read the address, you know how profoundly beautiful it is. And it starts with this intention. Today, we've gathered, and we see the cycles of life continue. We've been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living beings. So now, we bring our minds together as one, as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. The address continues with a number of petitions to all of the created order, acknowledging our interdependence upon Mother Earth, the waters, the fish, the birds, the plants, the winds, and this morning, which is appropriately the thunderers, whatever that precisely is, and all the other phenomena that comprise the natural world. At the end of each petition, there is a refrain that is spoken by all. And now our minds are one. I love participating in the recitation of this Thanksgiving address because it not only reminds me of the simple fact that all of life is supported by the natural world, Mother Earth, but it also creates space for us to live into the responsibility of that charge to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. It really cultivates room for oneness in unity in those who say it. And we know what a precious premium unity is these days. With social division as sharp as it has been in anyone's living remembrance, the Gospel's language about parents set against their children and in-laws against in-laws likely finds deep resonance in your lives as it does mine. As such, it's a bit of a struggle to find much good news in the Gospel this morning. There's not much good news in Jesus' proclamation that indeed he came to bring fire to the earth, and how he wishes it were already kindled, and that he's got this baptism with which he must be baptized, that is, his death and crucifixion, and the stress he's under. And then he poses a rhetorical question: do you think I've come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. Not much good news there. We often come to church to find peace and solace, and to attune our hearts to the loving kindness demonstrated in the life of Jesus. But this morning, Jesus holds up a mirror to reflect the world we live in, to reflect the very state of our hearts and minds. Just like in addressing his original followers, today we're forced to ask ourselves, what does it mean to follow Jesus? As Jesus indicates in this puzzling and clearly off-putting passage, those who follow him were regularly thrust into conflict and division, often against their own family members. To follow Jesus during his lifetime or shortly thereafter was to question the religious and the economic and the political status quo. If you were Jewish, it meant accepting him as the Messiah, this itinerant rabbi who hung out with the disreputable, accepted sinners, and preached a message of love and forgiveness. It meant that as accepting him, the Messiah, as one who looked nothing like the warrior King David they had expected. It meant ostracization from your community, being kicked out of your religious faith. If you were a Gentile, it meant accepting as the Messiah this, again, itinerant rabbi who hung out with the disreputable, accepted sinners, and preached a message of love and forgiveness. It meant, that is, accepting as the Messiah the one who looked nothing like what the culture held out as powerful or important, not an example to emulate. Moreover, following Jesus meant not merely adopting new beliefs, new ideas of the mind, but a whole new way of living. To be a follower of the one who accepted and even honored the disreputable meant that you needed to do the same, rejecting the easy temptation of judging others and instead inviting them into your lives. To be a follower of the one who preached love and forgiveness was indeed to practice the same, particularly when it comes to those who differ from us, maybe especially in regards to what they believe as well. This may be a difficult prospect now as it was then, for we all want to live an easy life of comfort. We all want to belong to the winning team or the important club that will secure our identity. We want to raise our social standing by associating with those who will give us more power or social capital. This desire is so constant and salient that we often stop noticing the impulse altogether. It's at function even as we read Bible and come to church. We cherry pick the parts of Jesus' message that we like best, the parts that make us feel accepted and cared for. God loves you. God died for you and me. And we turn it into some individual talisman that we can put around our chest and know that we're good with the guy upstairs and all is well. That Jesus came so that you could have an abundant life, which of course means being rich and prosperous and never suffering again, right? He turns water into wine and multiplies bread in the wilderness so we can enjoy ourselves and never hunger again, right? And pretty soon, Jesus begins to look a lot like our priorities. He's nice and courteous and successful, dressed for success. He cuts his hair, shaves his beard so he looks the part, right? He's well respected and can secure our social values. He will not only make us personally successful, he will make our nation great and ensure that we live in a land flowing with milk and honey. But is this what our faith is really about? In today's gospel, Jesus holds up a mirror to us. His fiery message about conflict may just be designed to force us to avoid these false notions of peace that are secured by excluding those we don't like. He shows us the conflict in our hearts and minds that leads us to work for our own security at the expense of others. In Jesus' own time, following his message of truth put ones at odds with the powers that be. Choosing to live one's life conforming to the pattern that he demonstrates meant being out of step with the culture at large. It meant conflict and hardship. And I wonder if it's changed very much. I wonder if we might also find ourselves thrust into conflict and division with those we care about, if we welcomed into our homes and into our churches and our social circles those whom society shuns. What would the action be from our family and friends and our co-workers if we acted like Jesus did? If we socialized with prostitutes? If we hung out with drug dealers? If we welcomed them into our homes? What would it be like if the unhoused were housed with us? What if we stood up for the immigrants in this country who are being rounded up and disappeared without due process? What if we really got to know the unhoused and homeless in our city, knew them by name, knew their stories? What if we stood up to the wide-scale environmental degradation of our world, simply made to make cheaper consumables for our insatiable appetites? What if we sacrificed our own comfort and ease for the sake of others and the world? What if we said no to the white nationalist theme that seems to be gaining traction through our country. Of course, across the Old Testament, the purifying fire Jesus seems to reference here is most associated with a fire that burns away impure religious practices. We're not talking about the technical, liturgically correct kind, but rather impure in that they are tended to make religion a source of false comfort, to whitewash the conflict underneath, to create a veil of ineffectual peace. Right religious practices and beliefs, too many have thought over the century, should be exempt you from suffering or disaster or poverty or the death all around. In this regard, I believe little has changed. We all want the prosperity gospel. Or think of, for instance, of the popular Christian obsession with accepting Jesus into your heart as the only means by which to escape eternal punishment and somehow secure for yourself an eternal reward. But what if faith wasn't about guaranteeing some future bliss for us individually, but rather was an invitation to live differently here and now, to see those around us neither as souls to be saved or threats to be deterred, but rather to see them, to see everyone as God's children, to be loved, honored, and cared for. I'm absolutely convinced that you and I, that we want our faith to matter, to make a difference, to be useful to us daily, to shape the way we think about our work and our families and our money. But it's difficult. It's hard to stand up to the prevailing pressures to conform to the cultural expectations. You know those ones that tell us we have to be perfect, successful, that we have to be better than those around us, that we need to silently compete with our neighbors, store up treasures for ourselves, build bigger barns, as we heard about weeks ago, instead of just being present with one another. And that's why we gather here at church, not because it's an obligation or a spiritual destination, but because it's a place to come to be confronted and then encouraged and equipped and sent out from which to make a difference in the world. It's a place where we can attune our hearts to the message of Jesus. It is a place to return to when living like Jesus creates division and hardship in our lives, because it does, and it will. But it also creates joy and a deep-felt purpose of doing the right work, the right way, for the right purpose. We gather here as followers of the truly human one, who holds up for us a mirror to show us the true states of our divided hearts and divided minds. We live in a divided states of America. There's no doubt about that. And we begin to change that when we look into our own hearts first and hold ourselves accountable to the insecurity and the fear that lives there, and instead look to our neighbors as resources, as partners, to attune our mind to the message to which we're called. We're invited to a peace that passes all understanding. It's a primal peace and a harmonious whole that existed in creation long before we showed up. But to experience it, we must confront the division that we bring. And we must remember the vision of our Creator, the Great Spirit. After addressing all our fellow creatures in creation, the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving Address remembers our origin. Now we turn our thoughts to the Creator, or Great Spirit, and send greetings and thanks for all the gifts of creation. Everything we need to live a good life is here on this Mother Earth. For all the love that is still around us, we gather our minds together as one and send our choicest words of greetings and thanks to the Creator. The last petition of the address talks about when language ceases and practice begins, when we actually put words into action. Today, in the midst of our division, we must wage peace, which means confronting the division we see, not running from it, but waging into it. We must clear our hearts and minds of all the division that lives there, the confusion, the hatred, and remember who it is that we follow. When we attune our hearts to his call, then our minds may be truly one. Then our minds may be truly one. Please join me in saying that refrain. And then our minds may be truly one. May it even be so. Amen.